And we are live with the Breakdown podcast. Today it is, again, just your lovely Logan Daniel, Aloggy Doves, and the even more beautiful Bubba Babs, Brandon Miracle.
I look fall-colored today?
Just a little bit. Of course, I've been wearing red for like the past 2 weeks, working at Target. So, not that I don't, I wear tons of red anyway. So, what's the difference? Let's just start off and let's talk about a little about our lives. Brandon, how have the past 3 weeks been for you?
We haven't really talked about this publicly, but I mean, as you know, or you might know, we have the parody satire 50 fact extravaganza up on the channel. And that video it just exploded. Lots of other YouTubers saw it and retweeted it, like Andre over at Game Explain, Alpharad, Relaxalax, Push Dustin over at Source Gaming. Just a lot of people took notice, really enjoyed it. The reception to this video has been uncommonly positive. Just like one of the most positive reactions to anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we dropped it at the right time. We put a lot of work into it, specifically you with that editing. Like, there was a lot of editing, there's a lot of animation, and, like, you put, out of the three of us, you definitely put the most hours into it. And so, I mean, yes, it was a team effort, but I want to give you props because, like, you did so well. And because you work so hard on that, like, it inspires me to do better work, So even as I go about my days, I'm still getting myself situated in St. Louis. There are certain job opportunities that I don't really want to talk about publicly right now, but things are looking up, right? I'm getting my life together. I'm scheduling things, but I mean, this video is really a testament to the work that we've been putting in, over the last few months. We started really up in February, with this podcast,
Yep.
To Paul's credit, Paul was the one that pushed us to do this podcast, right? And at a certain point, like, we were all like, yeah, this is it. Like, we want to do this. We want to eventually turn this into something. And I feel like, and to be fair to the rest of those subs, right? Because we've almost doubled our subs in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the mass majority of those were like within that first week. And while we still have a long way to go, like, we wouldn't be this far if we weren't podcasting every week. We didn't, have sometimes just the 1 to 2 people who are in the stream, at any given point. But, it paid off. And so it's unreal. And we're so close to hitting that 100K.
We are under 500 views away from hitting 100,000 views on a single video for the first time in the 10-year history of this YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's pretty unreal. Now, it hasn't been that long for me, right?
No, but I mean, the work that's happened in this last, how long has it been? 9 months, has been more present, more commanding, and more valuable than the last 9 years.
Right.
This feels like the official launch of the channel, but the channel has definitely been here for a long time.
Right.
I mean, I rebranded it as the Break Room Arcade back in 2016. And I've been fairly consistent on the channel since then, not doing anything particularly structured. The podcast is really kind of what got the wheels turning.
Yeah. I mean, definitely when we started the podcast, I saw that as like, okay, if there's one thing that we can do consistently, it's talk about games. It's talk about the media that we consume. Because one, that's just something we do all the time anyway. So if we could do that on a public forum and have some people come and listen, at least that's something, you know, and it's something that, like, for those who dig podcasts and dig conversation, and for me, like, I saw the worth in, you know, making like personality based content, you know, as I talk about, and like this was that basis, right? And it's kept us focused. I feel like it's allowed us to explore other creative opportunities. Like, I don't feel like that video would have been made if we weren't doing this podcast, because this is kind of like the foundation of what we're doing on the channel, right?
Yeah.
Everything else spreads out from these podcasts, from seeing the things we love to do. Yeah.
Quick shout out to Conman RDW in the chat. We had him on with Roger's Base earlier. At the end of last week to talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Make sure to check out his channel and all the stuff he does, and go follow Roger's Base as well, because they are lovely people. And that's another thing we should mention is, like, all of this work that we've done. We've made some amazing friends, and I think that might be the most valuable thing that we've gotten out of this.
Yeah.
It's just the community that we've built.
We've definitely, like, learned a ton as well, you know, learning that there are certain things that we should pay more attention to when we're uploading videos, and how we conduct ourselves, and, you know, even the way that we construct, and we even talking in front of a camera, you know. I have made more videos, you know, just recently in this past year than I've ever made before, you know, and it's given me a platform to do, you know, just that, which is super exciting.
You know what? Now that you mention that, I'm going to check, but I think this is our 300th video.
On the channel as a whole?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me look. No, we passed it.
Oh.
This is number 303.
That means the one we're doing right now is 303.
It should be, yeah. And that's not counting a ton of videos that are not publicly available on the channel anymore.
Oh, yeah. Right.
But yeah, it's been a great few weeks. I also ordered my insulin pump with the intent of making some vast changes to my health. That's been a very scary but simultaneously very encouraging thing for me. And I hope that the bill doesn't drown me, and that the effects of the pump will drastically improve my life, just in general.
I imagine that it would.
It's going to afford me a lot of freedom in my life that I don't currently have. I don't remember what it was like to be someone who didn't have diabetes, and I've only had it for 3 years. I don't remember what it was like to just eat freely without worrying about it. I don't remember a time when I didn't have to inject myself multiple times a day. Thinking about the changes that will come with the insulin pump has really, really put the last 3 years of my life into perspective. So I greatly look forward to the change and hope that it gives me the improvements to my health that I hope it does.
I hope it does too, because you know, ever since you had your near-death experience,
Yeah.
It's funny being good friends with a diabetic, how much more you pay attention to diabetes and what happens in the diabetes world, right? Like even some of the things, the recent types of pumps they've been developing that are constantly, you know, monitoring your blood sugar, and then not only have insulin but also glucagon in it, and it's just pumping a little bit. And you know, they called it the Bionic Pancreas, right? One of these things for the longest time. They have a different branding now, but it's essentially what it is. It's an artificial technological organ. You know, it does the work of the pancreas?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
does the work of the pancreas and the liver. So the
Okay.
pancreas produces insulin, the liver produces sugar.
Yeah. So
Um, yeah, so like that technology is going to be integrated into a lot of different insulin pump brands that are at the market level, consumer level. The one that I'm getting will eventually have that technology. Uh, and I believe the way insulin pumps work is that with insurance, you're entitled to a free upgrade every X amount of years.
okay.
So now that I have this insulin pump, years down the line, I will just have a free upgrade to essentially what is a bionic pancreas.
Right.
Uh, and it takes most, if not all, of the work out of being a diabetic.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
that's
that's
just so
yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought when I was turned on to that kind of that combination of technologies, because the technologies like have been there, for a few years now, and now it's just finally making it to market. And I just think about and it makes me emotional thinking about how you as my friend will just have that much more freedom and won't have to like the best you get to a point with like any health issues where you can manage them, and the less you have to think about it, the less you worry about it, and the better your life is. And so like I think about how much that freedom is afforded to you in that prospect, and it makes me emotional, right?
Yeah, it's kind of
um,
interesting that you say that too, because the effects of diabetes right now for me aren't nearly as severe as the stress that just comes with it.
yeah.
So removing that stress, in addition to just what the pump can do in general for my health, I could see just my overall attitude uh, being significantly improved. It also makes me feel good that you guys care.
Oh, dude, I think about my friends constantly, and like even
It's
not just my friends, but my family, and what that could mean for them. It's why I, behind the scenes, I won't get into it on here, but it's why I constantly kind of hammer in politics in our conversation, on certain issues.
yeah, no, and I agree with that. I think you sent me a video from Hank Green once talking about the loneliness that comes with disease.
Was it the one where he was talking about his own, like I think it was Crohn's?
Yeah, it was Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
And I related to that so hard because I don't have anybody in my circle, like my immediate circle, that is type 1 or otherwise. And a lot of the emotions I feel about being diabetic, I can't really share with people and have them understand in the way that I do.
Yeah.
And that's a very lonely experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, just experiencing something that you don't understand and that everybody else might think you're like crazy is like, oh no. Like, for example, like I've been having my own health issues, and it's been really hard to describe because I don't have like a name to put to it, right? I have my suspicions. And thankfully, thankfully and not thankfully, my sister has been having some similar issues. And so we're kind of on this journey where we might have the same issue and we can talk about it. And at least I have
Hmm.
her in my life to talk about it. But like for so many people, they've been so dismissive. Like, oh, you're young, you'll get over it. Like you'll heal. But then I'm like, no, no, no. It doesn't feel like a one-time thing. Like I've just been not getting enough sleep or not eating well enough, right? It feels like something is there, and it may very well be, just something. Maybe some just changes I need to make, some basic changes, and I don't know for sure, but it's really difficult when people become dismissive of those problems just because it doesn't show, or they don't see, or they don't feel the pain or the discomfort that you're in. Like I'll wake up in the mornings and I'll be really really stiff and I'll be sore, and it won't be excruciating pain, but it'll be bothersome, like I worked out the day before, but it's like almost all the time.
That same exact thing happens to me because type 1 diabetes is not something you see.
Hmm.
for the most part. I mean, when you get older, there are definitely some things that you will see that I hope I can avert. Um, but I that's one of the things that discourages me from talking to people about it, is because they don't see what I'm going through, even if I'm just with them, um, just spending the day with them. They don't know how I personally feel, like whether I'm in pain or if my blood sugar's high, because that comes with a feeling. Like, that's not something that I just have. It's something I know I have. Um, and I can't share that with them. And if I do, they're not going to understand
Yeah.
exactly how that feels. And I've also been dismissed with my type 1 diabetes before. And I'm like, that's a real disease that people recognize, and you're still dismissing it.
Yeah. I've, something that I've learned, and I feel like I've known it, but you get better at certain things, right? Sometimes it's just deep seated, like thinking habits that you had since you were young, but trying to overcome them. One thing I've tried to do is to never assume that what people are going through, right? Uh, and so I kind of do. I have like these like I have like a playground, in my head of like thoughts. And
Hmm.
I'm never making any assumptions about like, oh, these people are lazy or these people are this or that. It's like they might have something going on in their lives that I'm unaware of. Or maybe if I know that they're going through something, don't pretend like I completely understand everything that they're going through, and don't try to assume, or like I don't exactly know what goes on with type 1 diabetes, but like with all the things that I've been experiencing, I've experienced peripheral neuropathy, which is something that you definitely, we've talked about this before. It gets less and less as I kind of take steps to take care of myself, which is encouraging. Um,
Hmm.
Knowing that it feels like I've progressed in a positive direction. I guess that's the connotation with progress as opposed
It's
to regress.
it's funny too, thinking about that. Like, I'll have a lot of these breakthroughs in my health, especially in the last year. I've definitely been on an upswing in my life as far as diabetes goes. Um, but like sometimes I'll get like new technology, like when I got this guy, the Libra, where I can just scan my arm and I get my blood sugar and I know how I'm doing.
Right.
Um, I can tell people those things. I can be really excited about it, but they don't care. And it's not their fault that they don't care, and I
Right.
can understand that. But I mean, also, like, that is also part of the loneliness, is I can't be happy about things together with other people. At least
Right.
not truly. Like, it's nice to hear when I talk to you guys about it and you get excited for me when I tell you my health is good, or I'm getting my pump in a few days. Um, but just on a general level, like, I'll talk to people at work, and I just know when to stop talking about it because it really doesn't mean anything to them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that comes with a lot of things in life, is like you don't always have the people available at any moment to like rejoice with you in those things.
Yeah.
But it is good to have some of those people, right? And at least we and I think I've gotten better about like not feeling so like down on myself when those kind of things do come up. Like I don't go into Target and think, "Oh man, these people are really missing out on all the enjoyment I'm getting from all these different things." And more, I focus more on the people that I know are going to get really excited about those things for me, and genuinely excited, not be like, oh man, that's super cool. No, they'd be like, oh my god, that's amazing. And then they feel, at least to a degree, like my excitement, and they feel that excitement in a genuine way. They empathize, with me. And
Hmm.
that's super important to have those people in your life. And it's one of the reasons that we do this podcast, right? We started, we like to talk about those games. We like to feel these feelings, and we love to hear when other people feel those same things. And that's the whole idea behind community. That's why we started out and we talked about a lot about what we wanted this to be, and now we're 33 episodes of the breakdown deep. We split off a whole nother section of this into its own podcast. And we all knew we wanted to build a community. We wanted, we're more concerned about the few people that come back, time and time again than the passerbys, right? We're more concerned about getting, 500 dedicated views as opposed to like 2,000 random views,
Right.
And then also those people who come into our Discord plug. You can join our Discord from the link below the video. And that's what it's all about. It's about finding the people, who enjoy who we are, and then we can enjoy who they are, and having that back and forth and feeling like we all belong somewhere, which can be really difficult in this day and age. At least I know it has been for me.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Oh, just feeling like we belong in this day and age, like belong somewhere, it's why some people, why I think that's one of the good things about organized religion. It's like people go and they feel like they belong and they can have that community, and some people don't have organized religion, so they have to find it in other ways. And I want to make this at least in part one of those places.
I feel like on some level we have definitely achieved that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all these goons in the chat, and I say goons with all my heart in the best of intentions. And man, it's good to have, at least 3 or 4 people just going on in the chat and talking about games with us, even though we don't, acknowledge every one of their comments. Like, just know I see all of your comments, and I appreciate.
We are reading every single one.
Right. And it's also, this whole talk is also one of the reasons we added the mental health channel in the Discord. It's so like, it's not just all fun and games. It's a place where it's like, oh, I'm looking for some sort of relief and guidance, and we want to be there for each other, and we want the community to be there for each other, making these connections and meeting up for Smash demo events, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I can't wait to do more of that kind of thing. The day that we got to spend with Dream Drop and Conmen and Conmen's girlfriend and a couple of their friends, it was a great time getting to really know you guys and spending the day together, and just like spending it doing something we all were really excited about, and that was playing Super Smash Brothers. And I know a couple of you guys were excited to meet us. It was also exciting for us to meet you. So overall, it was a really great day, and I can't wait to do more of that, because it's really positive, very uplifting, and it means a lot to me, just in general, to know that we're having a positive impact.
But with that, I'm anxious to talk about the things that we have watched or played in the past few weeks. And there are definitely some intersections with you and me this week that we will get to.
You played Pokemon Red and I played Pokemon Blue.
Oh, goodness gracious. Almost.
It's pretty close.
Brandon, tell me about some of the movies and TV that you have watched this week.
I'll start with what I did most recently, and I mean this because I did it last night. I watched Infinity War for the first time since release on my 4K home theater setup in my basement. Um, and it was a fantastic experience. That was one of the here's the thing, like with 4K Blu-rays, not all movies are shot in 4K or mastered in 4K to begin with, but they'll release them on 4K Blu-ray at the premium cost, just to do it.
Yeah.
That said, there are some movies that get mastered in 4K after the fact. That still does make a noticeable difference. And I think Infinity War falls under that category. But from my couch and just watching it, especially with the sons of Thanos, like I could see so much detail on their faces that I couldn't see a single pixel from where I was sitting.
See, that's the goal. That's the goal. That's the point of saturation that, and this is, I've talked about this before, but I don't think home media is going to get much further past 4K. Because
don't worry, Conman, I'm not going to talk about the movie itself, but more the experience.
Because like once you can't see the pixels, like it doesn't matter anymore. Because you literally, even if it was like 8K, now the difference in resolution makes a difference as screens grow, right? So if you can fit like 100-foot screen, maybe you can get up to 8K and then that'll make a difference. But with like how big is your TV? Like 65 inches?
I think it's 55.
Okay. With even up to 65, 70 inches, like 4K from like a distance of being on the couch, you're not going to see the pixels anymore.
In fact, I should say this, like some of the games that I play that I can play in 4K, I've yet to do this with a movie, but with some games that I can play in 4K, I'll sit like 5 feet away from the TV just to see, the effect and how good it is.
Right.
And I'll be like 5 or 6 feet away from the TV and I still can't see any artifacting or any pixels of any kind. And it's just like making up my entire like viewpoint. It's fantastic.
Right. And I think that's why, like, HDR has kind of started to be one of the other selling points. It's because
now we have to do it and we have to improve the image in other ways now.
Right, exactly. We're getting to a point of saturation where, like, honestly, like, for, like, a basic home setup, like, I don't think I'm going to ever have, like, a TV larger than 65 inches. And 4K, again, it's gonna reach that point of saturation where you're not gonna see the pixels, right? And so now it's just a matter of like, how do you fill out that space? It's a really exciting place to be in, because eventually, like, especially something like, okay, talking about like the console wars, right? It's like, oh, look, this is more powerful than this. And like the resolution discussion, right? Eventually, everything's going to do 4K. And then people are going to stop talking about it because, like, that'll be essentially where it maxes out. There might be some 8K down the line. But again, like, you just have to think about it on a practical level. The only places that some of those higher resolutions are really going to matter is in the theater experience.
I mean, after we get to 8K, as far as a home theater experience goes, I don't see any benefit of getting any higher than that.
Yeah.
Your TVs would have to be massive to truly take advantage of the change.
Yeah, and people
I could see like home projectors you could make a case for, but still.
You need to have the space for it, and who has the space for like 100-inch TV, right?
I think as far as my basement setup is going, like once I hit 75 inches as far as the TV goes, like that's the max. I can't do any bigger than that.
Right. And then even to that degree, like, do you feel compelled to get a 75-inch TV at this point?
Not at this point, but if the opportunity ever arises at a good price, I could see where my particular setup in the basement could benefit from that.
Right. But but
I'm very happy with what I've got.
Now, I will say this one thing. The place that resolution is going to matter a lot going forward is with VR.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think there is a headset, I think meant for consumer consumption. I think it's the Pimax 8K. And I think even then, like, you can still see the pixels, right? Right now, we're with the current, like, more enthusiast headsets. It's what do you call it? Like, we're still dealing with the screen door effect. But in terms of, like, traditional media, it's all about, like, okay, now where do we go with aspect ratio and how do we make deeper colors? To Baconator, it depends on, I guess it really doesn't even depend on what instrument is in the background, because I can play piano and I can play guitar. So there's your answer. And I play a lot of music and I write a lot of music. I will plug this. I have my personal channel under the name Logan Daniel. You can look that up. If not, I'll post it in the Discord. I think there's some other channels I might get mixed up with. I only have like 38 subscribers right now. And I have some original music on there if you're interested. But going back,
as far as my 4K setup in my basement is concerned, last night was like one of the times where the value really showed itself.
Yeah.
I see it a whole lot more with movies than I do with games. It's understandable when it comes to video games,
right,
especially since I'm just operating on a PlayStation Pro or a
right,
PlayStation 4 Pro. Still, for some games like Monster Hunter, I play in 4K, and when I'm sitting far away, I can tell when I switch to 1080p because I can't read the text anymore sometimes.
Right.
So I know it's an improvement. For a lot of people, it can be hard to tell because 1080p is already a pretty tight pixel density.
Yes.
And when you increase that more, it's not as noticeable. But I notice my eyes are strained a little bit more if the resolution's a little lower.
Yeah, maybe we're just getting adjusted, you know?
Yeah, but last night was like, with Infinity War, I could really see it.
Yeah.
And it felt good.
And I think that's one of the reasons I haven't been like terribly compelled to go 4K just yet, is because like we're
still in its infancy.
Yeah, and there's still like most content like is upscaled. Like even with the PS4 Pro, most of those games are upscaled, and then it doesn't even play 4K Blu-rays.
And a lot of the games are only actually going to 1440 and not all the way up, I think.
Right. Which is still an improvement. But
it is, but I mean, it would be nice to get used to that of all the pixels on the TV.
Yeah.
But in addition to Infinity War, a couple weeks ago, I watched Baby Driver for the second time.
Still haven't seen it the first time
since I saw it in theaters.
Okay.
This movie pairs really well with a 5.1 setup, by the way.
Oh, really?
Music is so incredibly ingrained into the movie. And they do a really cool thing. And it's not even that unique, but like the main character, Baby, will often have his headphones in the movie. And it plays actually a pretty major role into the film itself. But whenever he takes an earbud out, my satellite speakers are playing his headphones, the headphone audio. So I was sitting next to my left satellite speaker, and he pulled his left earbud out, and the speaker went dead, and I could hear the song from the other side of the room.
Dude, that's so exciting, especially because like I've had experience with surround sound mixing, like for video and stuff like that. And man, okay, when I'm mixing like just stereo, like music is going to be stereo, right? Generally, there have been some like albums that they've like remastered in 5.1, which is insane. But even mixing in stereo sometimes, like trying to pan everything correctly and make everything sound really good, like that's involved enough. But once you add like 4 more speakers, like that gets really, really involved. And then automating the panning. And I remember watching a movie, and after like you experience some of that post-production audio work, it really changes how you listen to movies, you know? And then so if you get into like I just love, especially like
for me a lot too,
especially with something like a Dolby Atmos, right? And Dolby Atmos is like 17.2 2 or something like that, right?
Because you have like ceiling speakers with.
Yeah, you have ceiling speakers. You have all these speakers around. There's like 2 subwoofers. I don't know. It's insane, right? And so in that case, like, I don't know. And this is where I'm excited for like 3D interfaces with like VR and AR and stuff like that, mixed reality. Because like all of a sudden, if you have a 3D interface for something like that, and you can like literally just put your hand in and then just like automate like that, like that's insane. And it's very involved.
I watched my college audio professor edit sound for Dolby Atmos because he is a professional audio engineer. He's worked for The Onion and a few other places. And he was showing us the workflow for Dolby Atmos, and it's a sphere, and the sound is node-based. So you move the node in the 3D sphere where the sound should approximate, and that approximates it in the speaker space.
Right. Well, and that's how I've never seen it, but that's how I would anticipate. Like that seems like the most logical type of interface for that, right? And which is why
crazy, like user-friendly level.
Right. Well, and this is why I'm excited for just like again like VR, AR, 3D interface, like digital interfaces. Even for like 3D design, I can't imagine like the kind of tools that are going to be developed in the next like decade for that kind of thing, and then how it'll improve and improve workflow and honestly like push down costs of like certain like development and 3D animation and such, you know.
Definitely. If you haven't seen Baby Driver, if you like Edgar Wright. If you've seen any of his movies, like Scott Pilgrim versus the World, Shaun of the Dead, and there's a few more that aren't coming to mind right now, definitely check this out. It's an editing masterpiece. Like, they edited this film on set while they were filming the movie. So much of it is, like, timed to sound effects and music that, like, honestly, they would have had no other choice but to edit it there. But it really shows when you watch it. It is such a treat.
I wonder how much that guy got paid. Like, the main editor, like, he must have, like, oh, man. Like,
right?
He must have been, like, just... all his programs must have been, like, second nature, right?
I mean, this obviously is going to be, like, in the film world, they call them dailies, where you watch back the film that you've shot on that day, and then you roughly cut it together to form whatever scenes you may have gotten.
Yeah.
So that's what he was doing on that level, but it was still close to what you'd consider a picture lock. And again, what a picture lock is when they arrive at a finished image edit, like, this is how long a shot's going to be, this is how long it'll be in the film, and this is how they cut together. That way they can send it over to post-production, they can work on coloring and CG. So that's mostly what they were doing, was achieving picture lock on set, but that's still incredible. I watched part of, like, the behind the scenes,
right?
For how Edgar Wright came up with this movie, and this movie is something he's wanted to do for years. And they had, like, all of the storyboards and animatics done well before, like, the movie was even greenlit. That's how, like, specific Edgar Wright had gotten with this movie, and how much was just ready to go.
I feel like that's the mark of, like, a true visionary. Like, I hear stories about, like, you know, even musicians, because that's mainly my specialty and audio. But, like, sometimes I'll hear things in my head. Like, I'm like, and it's very crystal clear. And it happens more often when I'm actively writing, like, every day. Mm-hmm. But, like, some people have reached the point where they know exactly what they're doing and what they want. And they can write that out, you know, and then, like, make documents to have it to where, like, this is exactly what we want, and people perform it and they're like, yep, that's exactly what I needed, right? And so in a similar way, that sounds like what it, you know, he said Edgar Wright?
Edgar Wright.
Yeah. And
he is a true auteur.
Yeah. That's super exciting.
Logan, as an audiophile, I am still angry that you haven't watched this movie.
I know, and it's funny because it's my younger brother Ethan's, like, favorite movie. and he has it on Blu-ray, and I've been home on several occasions, and I've had every opportunity to watch this film on
If
Blu-ray.
you haven't seen it by the next time you're at your parents' home, next time you're here, we're gonna watch it.
Yeah,
We've got the 5.1. It'll be perfect.
let's hope that I get off for like Thanksgiving and I can just like drive home and
Heck
do that
yeah,
kind
man.
of stuff. So
You need to. Moving on. I'll save this next one for afterwards. But I've also been watching Haunting at Hill House, which is a horror series on Netflix. I believe it is based on a book by the same name. I don't know that for sure right now. I can look that up. But regardless, this is one of those shows or one of those horror pieces that's focused more on the psychological element than just, cheap jump scares. And that's something that I appreciate because I have a ton of like claustrophobic kind of tension anxiety. Like
Right.
if I'm specifically in movie theaters, but so having something at home to watch makes it easier for me, but also knowing that it's mostly psychological, which is something I like more anyway,
Right.
definitely drove me to this show. I'm 4 or 5 episodes in, and basically it is a series of interweaved stories about the past of this like set of like 5 or 6 siblings and this house that they lived in and the things and the happenings that happened in that house and how it's affected them in their adulthood.
Okay.
And it focuses more on the brokenness of the family, but what all those horrific things did to make that happen.
Right.
So there's this great like back and forth between future and past that you get in every episode. Transitions between them are seamless, and it's weaving a really interesting story. I'm about halfway through the show, and I can't wait to go back and watch more. But if you're into horror stuff or psychological horror or anything like that, I couldn't recommend this enough. This is fantastic. Definitely. We've kind of been in a horror renaissance in the last few years, I'd say, with movies like It and The Conjuring that are, more well-crafted pieces rather than just, a popcorn flick.
Yeah, I feel like horror in general. I think on average, like just media in general is getting like more masterful. Like it's much more of an established art now, specifically like with movies and TV, because like these forms of media they're not old,
No.
late 1800s, like having some of the first like moving pictures and such. And then, there's broadcast television. And now we're in this whole new era of just like, hey, make something and upload it online, and it's the best stuff is really making its way to the top, because anybody can talk about it. Anybody can share it.
It's so different than like the scene or like the actual movie theater scene where typically the better marketed movies are the worst movies because that's where more of the money is spent and more of the time is spent. So they make it to the top, and then like movies that are crafted with a more passion and more care, they don't get noticed. And it's the opposite on services like Netflix because you're not paying. It wouldn't make any sense to besides the subscription fee, but it wouldn't make any sense to push something to the top that's bad.
Right.
So now we have a place where these directors and these production crews can make something they're proud of, and people will actually see it.
Right. And there is something to be said about viewership numbers because Netflix still wants people to watch these things, and so the things that are watched more, they have to weigh these things. But
right,
it seems as if because of this communication, because of like aggregate sites like Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes, that more people are drawn more often to the really good stuff. Now, there is still popular bad stuff, and that stuff has a right to exist, and it has a right to be enjoyed as well.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that.
Absolutely. But you can see that there is, because there's all this discussion, all this really, really good stuff for really good reasons is being viewed and shared, and I'd love to see the internal numbers at Netflix. but also because of like that medium and the subscription service and the ability to binge shows, just drop like a whole season all at once instead of like, you know, spacing it out. Just watch it at your own leisure, right? It's allowed for, you know, more things to happen and have a little bit more freedom in the way that we tell stories with visual media.
You know, it's interesting that you brought that up because there are a lot of things in The Haunting at Hill House that you could miss if you're, you know, if you're watching it for the first time. Like they'll hide things in the background or maybe even sometimes in the foreground. They'll just hide things in frame that you're not going to notice on your first watch through, but it'll pertain to the story. It might be there to spook you, but they're counting on you watching this more than once, and it's in a place where you can do that easily. Right.
And actually, I'll mention this. So, John Green, of the author, also of Vlogbrothers fame, he just did a video, partially about his book Looking for Alaska. And specifically talking about how years ago, because it was his first novel, somebody had bought like the movie rights to it, right?
Sure.
Which he was like, oh man, somebody wants to make a movie. That's awesome. They had a really great script for it. Eventually it got canned, but that money that he made off of it allowed him to do a lot of really cool things that he wasn't able to do. He didn't have to stress about money after he sold the movie rights. And I'll post the link to the video in the chat. But he also mentioned the fact that Looking for Alaska, as in terms of visual media, is happening for sure now. But it's not going to be a movie this time. It's going to be a limited series on Hulu, right? So he said a lot of the things that would have, you know, gotten lost in the movie version, because you only have, you know, max maybe like 2.5 hours to tell a story. With a limited series, there's so much more freedom to talk about things that, you know, were implied, only implied by, you know, in the book. And so because of this medium, they're able to make something that's so much more true to the source material. And I think that's a great thing. Even something with like The Handmaid's Tale, you know, we're in season 2. I think it might have gotten renewed for a 3rd season, but that's based on a book. Same with Game of Thrones. You know, they don't have to turn it into a series of movies. It's like we can do so much more with like several seasons of a show.
And now they're even making a prequel out of it specifically for TV.
So it's a great day and age to be in, you know.
Oh, for sure. We have the next season of Black Mirror comes out next month, right? I want to say it does. It's coming soon.
I that feels really like soon. Wait, would that be season 6 or season 5?
The last season came out last December.
Well, I know, but they like, yeah, I don't.
This would be season 5, by the way.
Yeah, I don't see anything for it. We know it's coming back.
Expected to be released in December 2018 and will include an interactive episode.
Oh, I did hear about the interactive episode. I think that's really significant. And not that interactive visual media hasn't existed before. Obviously, we have video games. But to have something in this song.
They're teaming up with people from like Telltale Games to make these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see some media kind of come together to produce new media.
Yeah. The first thing I thought about when they were talking about like interactive media is there is an episode of Futurama where they go to a movie theater and it's there's like this one like reoccurring like in-universe show, and I can't remember what it's called, but it stars, stars a bunch. It's a robot show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the theater, and at a certain point it stops, and then they're like, "Oh, make this decision. Will this character do this or will it do that?" And Fry hits like the one button, and then it announces to him like, "You chose this one." He goes, "No, I didn't choose that one." It's like, "You definitely did," and like it just decided for them, right? But to have something like in reality like that, that's not just like a joke in a show. It's really cool. It's like a choose your own adventure book, except it's like
there's also discussions to kind of move that stuff into movie theaters too.
yeah, that's super exciting, and it'd also be interesting to have like a whole like season of a show do something like that.
There is one on Netflix already, I believe, that is doing that. It kind of like a test run. It was the Puss in Boots series, Puss in Book.
Okay.
From DreamWorks Animation. Also Minecraft story mode.
Oh, that makes sense. But I think isn't Telltale was involved with that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean they developed the actual game story, Minecraft story mode.
So we're kind of like right on the genesis of this idea.
Right.
Well, maybe not the idea, but definitely the technology making it possible.
Right. I was about to say, like, the idea has been there for years. I mean, even just with choose your own adventure books,
Right.
And certain video games.
That'll take me to my last thing that I watched. I'm pretty sure it's been 3 weeks. I've been trying to remember everything I did. But this is kind of where Logan and I did the same thing, but we didn't do the same thing. So I started watching Riverdale. And for those of you who don't know, Riverdale is a new adaptation of the Archie Comics characters in a kind of gritty, suspenseful thriller / drama / teenagers at high school kind of show. Yeah, and it features Archie characters. Like Archie himself is the protagonist, and you have Betty and Veronica, as well as Josie and the Pussycats are also in this series. What's interesting is that Logan started watching The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, not knowing that it was. You didn't know it was based on an Archie series, right?
I didn't know. I mean, I've known about like Sabrina the Teenage Witch for years because of the show. I always thought it was kind of like whatever.
Which was also based on the Archie comics series.
Right, and I didn't know that it was an Archie comics. It's funny because like I'm just realizing what kind of legacy Archie comics has. Because like most of my life, comics has been DC and Marvel, and it's just been superheroes. But it's like, oh, there's like a whole another like huge like comic book company, Archie. And probably
I knew
some
about
others.
Archie as a kid, but I think I only read it in panel form.
Yeah, I knew about Archie, but that's all I knew. I was like, it's just Archie. I didn't know there was like Archie comics and like all of these different the IPs.
Umbrella.
Yeah.
I started watching Riverdale because I wanted to watch The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and there was talks that maybe at some point they'd cross the two series over because obviously they're both based on Archie properties. So I started watching Riverdale, and after the first episode, I decided I was going to keep watching Riverdale. I think I was following this show kind of in the back of my mind, watching some episodes of Black Nerd Comedy, Andre Meadows, because he kind of watched it ironically and then accidentally started to like it because he was a fan of Archie comics and he did not expect this to be good. Turns out it's pretty good. The drama is there. The mystery is really cool because they kind of unfold the secrets of the town of Riverdale and how all the people there are connected to it. It just unfolds in a really interesting way. I mean, it's not doing anything groundbreaking, but it's really solid.
Yeah.
I'm into the atmosphere. I enjoy the characters. You have Cole Sprouse, one of the from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Well, that's how I know the show is
because of Cole Sprouse.
Now, here's the thing. I'll interject. One of the reasons I haven't watched Riverdale is because almost everybody I know who watches Riverdale is a woman. And that's a really bad thing to say, but like, okay, generally the women I know, they're not like too invested in terms of like, look at this really quality content. Like I have a lot of, and not that I don't have discussions with like intelligent, nuanced like movie discussions with women, right?
I
That's
was gonna
definitely
say you're
possible.
riding a fine line right now.
Right. Call me sexist, whatever it may be. But a lot of the women I know, they're not like into that kind of thing. And so those are mainly the women who are watching Riverdale and they're like, I love Riverdale because like drama and all this other stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, it's going to be one of these Pretty Little Liars shows. It's going to be like so much drama and it's not.
It's funny that you say that because when I told my wife I wanted to watch it, she says, "Oh, that's the one that's part of Pretty Little Liars, right?" And I said, "No."
So okay, this has been a learning experience, right? Because I think we all have like our assumptions, right? And I get better at questioning my assumptions like all the time, every day, right? And so it opens me up to new experiences that I might have been like biased against before. And so this is another one of the experiences.
Like anime?
Well, even, yeah, like anime was one of them, freshman year of high school. So I'm 6 years into being a weeb. Thank you very much.
Congratulations on your weebiversary.
But even like something with like, I heard I was not excited for the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina because all I thought was that it was going to be a Sabrina the Teenage Witch remake, which it's not. But I'll get into that after you talk about keep talking unless you're done with Riverdale.
Let's see. I'm about 5 or 6 episodes deep into Riverdale. The one thing that's different, or like one of the biggest things that's different between it and the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, is that Riverdale is a show that airs on television. As to where Sabrina is a Netflix original. Am I right in that?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a ton more to say about it because I'm only 5 episodes deep. That said, I hear a lot of people who play Persona 5 say that like the point of Persona 5, well, not the point, but like one of the big things about Persona 5 is that the parents suck. And like 4 episodes into Riverdale, I was like, wow, the parents suck. The parents are like the worst people in the show. They are awful people, a lot of them. A lot of the drama that happens between characters is fueled by the parents. Like the parents are the catalyst.
Right.
It's a really interesting approach that I imagine a lot of teenagers would appreciate.
Yeah. I feel like there's something similar with Sabrina, except it's less just parents and just more adults in general. Like, they're the hard-headed ones. They're the ones who are starting. And some of them are, like, not even technically human. So it's like, it's a little bit different. But, and of course there are, but I think all of the younger characters, they're the ones who show a little bit more, like, change and be like, oh, well, I screwed up there. And then, so it's like, they're not like antagonists, but they may be for like an episode, but then they like serve a different role. Like almost like their relationships are evolving with like the main character, specifically Sabrina. And I like to see that change and that ebb and flow of the characters and their motivations, and their actions. Like I'll say this cause I don't think it's too terribly spoilery throughout this season. Like, there's this battle of Sabrina, whether she wants to essentially sign her soul away to Satan, for to keep her witch powers, right? Because that's the caveat. It's like you need to.
So it's kind of like, am I a Muppet or am I a man kind of thing?
I guess so, though I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. You want to explain
seen
yourself?
The Muppet movies?
A few of them. I've not really seen a ton of Muppet movies. I've seen.
Have you seen The Muppets with Jason Segel?
I have not.
Okay. Well, there's an Oscar-winning song in that movie, by the way. Winning. Where Jason Segel and his brother. His brother is a Muppet, but he's a
Okay.
human. They have this internal struggle about whether they identify as a man or a Muppet.
Oh my God.
So
That's
I kind of just use that as an analogy for stories where people don't know like what aspect of their life do they want to continue with.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's very much the same because,
Watch the
um,
Muppets, man. That's a great.
Sabrina's father, was a warlock, which is just a witch, but the male, title for a male witch, right? A warlock.
Right,
Um,
right.
and then, which is something like I didn't know. I think I knew in the back of my mind when they started talking about warlocks. I was like, I knew that, but I didn't know it because I would have just called them a male witch, right?
I mean, Ganondorf's a warlock.
I don't know. All I know is that my roommate has a black cat, and after watching that show, I'm definitely a warlock. So, pretty hype. And then like her mother was a mortal. It was a human, right? And so she has that dichotomy, and they play on that back and forth throughout the season.
Does she still like live with her aunts? Are her aunts
Yes.
part of the series? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. They are central, and they are one of Sabrina's biggest causes of grief.
They weren't shown a whole lot in the initial trailer, but there was like one
Oh.
shot of Hilda, I think, and I could have sworn on my life it was the same Hilda from the sitcom. I was like, "Hello."
You could see, right? They had the sitcom, and you could see Zelda and Hilda like in them, right? They're not the same actors. I really, really like the
Okay.
performances of both actresses. They just do their perspective thing. And here's something I will say is I love both of their characters, and I think both
I
of
would
them.
hope so because that played a huge part in the success of the sitcom. Was the ants.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And something I will say, if you guys didn't know, I went into this thinking this was a remake of the sitcom. It is not. It is based on a different series, which is based on the same IP as Sabrina's the Teenage Witch, because she is still Sabrina and she is a teenage witch.
It's based on the comic reboot.
Yes. And it's much, much darker in tone. There is a lot of...
I think Riverdale is also based specifically on a reboot comic.
Yes.
By the way.
That would make sense. And, oh man. This show is just... you can see the comic in it, right? Mm-hmm. To a lot of scenes. I started watching the first episode with my buddy Corey, and it was funny... because that night I went over and I hung out with Corey and we started watching this like British, like doctor, like comedy drama, which was fun. But at a certain point, he was like, "Oh, have you seen the new Sabrina show?" And literally a few minutes earlier, my friend Hannah had messaged me and she goes, "Oh my God, the new Sabrina show. So good, like very, very good." Like she was like highly recommended. And then without any communication between the two or me mentioning Hannah's, message to me, Corey's like, "Let's watch Sabrina." I go, "I guess this was fate." We watched the first episode and I was like, I'm so into this. It was so well executed.
I'm excited.
Yeah. And it was funny because like Corey was like mentioning like some of the shots, like there will be this vignette of sorts where it'll focus on like one central part and then the rest will be blurry. He goes, "I don't know why they do that," but I was like, I love it. They don't do it in every shot because sometimes there's more than one important character in the scene, but it's something that they use often, and I feel like it's just very reminiscent. Like all the shots are very reminiscent of how a comic would be presented to you.
Yeah, definitely. From the way you make it sounds like it's there in part to be part of the visual identity of the series.
Absolutely, and so it felt like I was watching a comic, in a lot of ways, which
Riverdale doesn't do that as much. I'll say that.
Yeah, so I love all the characters. I love the back and forth between some of the. There's so many characters, and they all feel essential to the narrative, in one way or another. And okay, I will say this, and here's my lonely sad boy coming out, right? I love the relationship between Sabrina and her boyfriend Harvey. It is central, right? Going back and forth between like, do I want to be a witch? Do I want to be a human? And establishing all this stuff. Like, I feel like the pacing of the first season was amazing. I think it ended on a really great note and really set up the second season really well. But like, you can just see like, and again, the actors do it so well. Like, they communicate just how in love like these two characters are, and how much they're like, I just make googly eyes at you every time and I get giddy. I was like, this is so amazing. This is so like,
I have kind of a similar experience with a character relationship in Riverdale, and it's a lot different actually, because it's not romantic, but it's between the characters of Betty and Veronica.
Yeah.
Because they kind of have a stinted relationship, because they are both into Archie.
Right.
But they like each other a lot. And you kind of see them overcome like their affection for Archie and let their friendship come first.
Right.
And they do that over a couple of episodes, but like seeing that come together, like every time Betty and Veronica are on screen at the same time, I feel really good.
Yeah. And I'll say this, like, the show is just like, it feels like a twist on like a coming of age teenage romance, but there's this added aspect of like, oh, she's also a witch, and she has to deal with this whole satanic cult, and that she's also a part of, and just all this other stuff.
She's a growing teenager, but there's also this satanic cult thing.
But okay, no, they really, really play into the romance. Like, you watch any movie or show that's like, okay, it's all about like this one couple, and it's like, are they gonna make it? Are they gonna make it? And they play it up, and I'm like so smitten on like Sabrina. Like, I watch it, I'm just like, I'm so in love. Like, Harvey, you're such a lucky guy. Like, there's not a lot of moments where like a woman looks at a guy like that and it's just like, and of course it's idealized because it's a show, and
right.
That makes for good entertainment. And I think that's one of the reasons I love it so much.
There's also nothing wrong with desiring a happier world.
I mean, this is true, and I think personally I fought that for so long, and as of late, like, I have a more realistic approach to like how I deal with these things, and I'm still learning, I'm still getting better at it, but I think I've gotten to the point where I wouldn't have allowed myself to enjoy something like this in the past few years. I
remember having conversations with you where you specifically told me that you weren't into the coming of age story in general.
Right.
So I'm excited to hear that, especially coming from this show, because it makes me personally more interested than I was, and right. I already was pretty interested to begin with.
Well, I mean, now that I've finished it, which is a hard recommend. That is a hard recommend because it's so good. I was like so impressed. I didn't anticipate that I would like it as much as I did, but I did, and I absolutely loved it. And so if you're okay with like satanic imagery, which I know, like, if I told my dad about this show, he would not be into it at all.
Mine too, for that matter.
But I think that's, the difference between like, recognizing that it's a piece of fiction, right? It doesn't have to have any bearing on your true beliefs or anything like that. It's a story, and you should enjoy it in that context. Like, divide what you watch. Like, it can be separate from reality. and you can still enjoy it. And that's how you really, really enjoy media. You have to separate it from the reality of the situation. Just enjoy it. Just escape for a minute.
Now that you've finished Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, you should head over to my area, my side of the
I was
conversation.
literally just about to say it's time to start watching Riverdale.
I imagine these two shows are very different thematically, which is a good thing because honestly, they don't want to make the same show twice.
Right.
But I anticipate that at some point that we will see these characters cross over for something.
Yeah.
And also, I will immediately watch Chilling Adventures of Sabrina as soon as I'm done.
How many seasons is Riverdale?
I want to say that it's 2 full seasons and we're approaching a third.
Okay.
And it's like the traditional 13 episode format.
Okay.
I'm looking it up right now.
A
22 episode season for season 2, actually.
Okay. I used to be like so obsessed with like just getting more from a show in the sense of like more content. But as I have like gotten older, and then you see like how many shows like will do like longer episodes but less episodes. I definitely appreciate like shorter shows. So when I hear like,
I was about to say that, yeah.
Yeah, like, Sabrina is this first season is just 10 episodes. Also the framing of it, right? They don't call it like a season. They call it like part 1, which
that comes with the thought that the conclusion isn't very far.
Yes.
Almost.
Yeah. But I mean, even to that degree, gotta mute this tab. Even to that degree, like, let's see, Castlevania is framed as a season, and that still works for a lot of shows. But even like, okay, something like Maniac was like limited series, part 1 through 8. It's like, okay, we're not getting any more, but that's fantastic. That's fine. Oh, that's also something. That's also something that I watched. Man, I watched like so much. Like, okay, I like watched like the first like 4 episodes of Castlevania, season 2, which is muy bueno so far. There's a lot of like good like comedic moments, especially between.
I'm doing a watch party for that.
Especially between Alucard and Trevor Belmont. Because Alucard's still he's half vampire, right? And so he makes like a joke about like eating Trevor Belmont, and Trevor Belmont just like gives it back to him, and then it's just casual. And like the third character, I can't remember what her name is. She kind of like
the witch character.
I think she's a mage or a sage.
Okay.
She was like, "Oh, you guys are all fine," and then she walks away, and they kind of like, I think at one point they're like, "F you," and he goes, "F you too," and then they laugh about it, right? I love the exchange. In addition to that, man, I'm just now remembering all of the shows that I watched in the last few weeks. I watched Maniac. I thought Maniac was fantastic. This is the best Jonah Hill performance I've seen to date. Like,
yeah, agreed.
Super good. Also Emma
Fantastic.
Stone, just out of this world. Super, super good.
I'll watch Emma Stone in anything though. So I was a little more impressed with Jonah Hill because I don't watch a lot of the stuff he's in.
Yeah. Also, he's so skinny now.
That said, I love Emma Stone. And
yes,
she did fantastic.
Absolutely. Both of them just did a fantastic job. Limited series, I think it's 10 episodes, I believe.
Yes, I think so.
Really well done. I also watched like 4 episodes of Atypical, and I've been sleeping on this one. I've really been sleeping on this one.
You've been
I know
really sleeping on this one.
You and Paul have been going on about Atypical, and then I finally got around to watching Atypical, and I was like, oh man, you want to talk about a show that's like revealing, like it feels like, and I'm pretty uninformed when it comes to why am I blanking? Like autism and the spectrum, right?
Hmm.
I know there is a spectrum and there's varying degrees of competencies. And I know they have a lot of struggle with certain things, but I just don't think about it too often. And so this really got the gears going in terms of like how I view autistic people. And I know several people on the spectrum, and I feel like this show made their personalities more accessible just because I have more of an understanding of what they go through, and how they process things. Like, there's a lot of moments in that show where people are incredibly dismissive or not understanding, or like, oh, he's weird, he's a freak, right? And then it makes me angry. I was like, but you guys don't understand.
I had an experience like that today, actually. Um, I was at a restaurant that I'll leave unnamed just for the sake of the story. Um, and I was talking to one of the servers there, and we were talking about work because I had my work jacket on, so they were questioning, what I did for the TV station and stuff like that. And then I got on the topic of what this person did for a living because they had another job outside of the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And they mentioned that they work with children with Down syndrome. And I mean, bless their heart, I know they didn't mean it this way, but when they were describing how they felt before they started working with the children, they said I would look at them and I would say, ugh. And that felt like a dart through the heart. I couldn't believe just how quickly someone could dismiss another human being. Despite that this person works with these children now and has a changed perspective, it just surprised me just how different their perspective was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that one got me today, and I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah. And again, it's like, even watching this, and I don't get like guilty like I used to, because I think there's like a certain like utility in guilt. Like it tells you when you're like, oh wow, like I've been doing something wrong, right?
Hey, I screwed up.
Yeah. So I mean, I do feel guilt, but I just don't get caught up in it anymore. It's more of like, oh wow, I need to change like how I process things and how I view things. And I will say this, maybe there is other media out there that tries to explain, something like this, something like people being on the autistic spectrum. But I haven't come by it. And so at least for me, and I think probably for a lot of other people, this show is really, really important. Because from what I understand, this is an accurate representation of what autism can be like. And even like the struggles of the parents, like the mom who is constantly like, I don't know if he can do it. Like we've dealt with him for so many years, and the dad's like really like less understanding, but he's more of like, oh, just let him do it. Like he wants to do these things. We should let him do these things. But then the mom's thinking about like, well, look at all the things that could go wrong, and there are things that still go wrong, And
I said this when I talked about the show, but like the character of the sister is someone I relate to on an incredible level because, I grew up with my sister not having, full use of her brain.
Yeah.
So she operates more like an elementary schooler, even in her 20s. So seeing the way that the sister interacts with Sam and how that changes her life and the kinds of feelings she has from that, like I can say with 100% accuracy that is what it's like.
Yeah, I love how she is like never hesitant to go to bat for her brother, right? But at the same time, like you can tell that he's obviously comfortable around her, like one of the few people that he's like, well, this is just my sister. And And it's also fun to see her like just treat him like another human being, you know? Like she gives him crap, but it doesn't seem to bother him, you know? That as it would like other people. And that's huge because they're just other people. Like, you know, if your understanding of how they process information, like it's really easy to kind of just like work around that, you know? And so like this has been a learning experience for me, and I hope I think it will have a lasting effect on how I view people, and I can't wait to keep watching because I think it's been a week since I watched it, because Halloween really hit me and I was like, I want to watch a spooky show, and that's when I watched Sabrina.
I was in the same place, and right now I'm like counting down the days until I can watch the Muppet Christmas Carol. Because I love that movie.
Oh man, there's so many Christmas like films that I really, really, really want to watch. Like I didn't watch White Christmas last Christmas season, right? So I think once December hits, like I want to see if I can get some people together and be like, let's all watch White Christmas together.
You got to build up that catalog ahead of time.
Yeah, right.
I already watched Nightmare Before Christmas, and that's one I forgot to put on my list.
Yeah. Man, okay. I just want to note, like, we're still talking about movies and TV, and we're like an hour and a half into this podcast, about maybe a little less, but I think this is a good place where we can move on. Now, the only anime that I really watched in the last few weeks was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I have finally caught up. We're finally in the fourth arc. Yeah, the fourth arc, which is technically we're in the third season, because fourth season. The second season was split up into two parts.
Two arcs?
Yeah. Well, no, it's one arc. It's one arc, just two parts, right?
Okay.
So they split the season up between the first season was the first two arcs. And then the third arc is the second season, and then the fourth arc is the third season. And now I'm in the fifth season, which is the fifth arc. fourth season, fifth arc. It's all over the place.
We know. We got it.
Well, this one, I'll say this, like, this one threw me for a loop just because of the main character, right? The naming convention is, like, even more odd. I can't remember the name of the main character, but it should be noted that he's, like, not a descendant of, like, the Joestars? Or at least that's not what it seems like. Oh, except he technically is, because he is the son of Dio. But Dio has Jonathan Joestar's body. So in a roundabout way, he's a Joestar.
Part of the lineage.
Right. In just like this weird way. And I was like, I can't believe they did that. I was like so confused after the first like 2 episodes, because I was like trying to wrap my head around what was happening. I was like, they didn't just do that. But it's also cool because it just takes place in an entirely, different place. Each season, each arc has, I think they're in Italy this time.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's Dio's son when he was in Jonathan Joestar's body. That's what Dreamcop's saying in the chat. So I'm really enjoying it. But now I'm at the point where I can just watch weekly. But I don't have a premium Verve subscription because money has been tight the past few weeks. So I haven't been able to. That like current episode is locked behind that paywall. But I think maybe I have like a few episodes to actually catch up on.
Yeah, you can still watch them for free on Crunchyroll, but
you can still watch them for. Well, it's the same thing on Verve because it's just Crunchyroll, right? But you have to wait, that extra day. So I have some catching up to do. But it's only a few episodes, and that's okay. I think the only other thing that I really watched in terms of anime was I watched a few episodes of the dub of Shokugeki no Soma, just to kind of like compare what was happening.
Just feel it out.
Yeah, and I'll say this, from like at least watching like the first like episode, I like the dub, though I feel like because of like the casting, like the characters are giving off different vibes, right?
I feel like this is the stem of all sub versus dub arguments. Is like this is what's actually going on.
Yeah, like there is like it's almost like they're different characters to a degree. Like they have some of the same motivations, but the delivery of their line communicates like a little bit of a different personality. Mm-hmm. And so it's been weird because I've mostly watched dubs.
I've had this experience like watching the sub versus the dub of Dragon Ball.
Right.
Especially with Super, because I watched it week to week when there was only a sub. And the specific nuances to Goku's character are very different in English and in Japanese, though Funimation is trying to make it a point to get closer and closer to that Japanese depiction.
Right.
But they do come off as different characters to me, so I feel you on that.
So, I mean, yeah, this is kind of the first experience I've ever had that. And that was one of the most jarring things. At first, I was like, I wonder what the performances are going to be like in terms of, like, are they quality performances? But then at a certain point, I'm like, the performances are fine. But, like, they feel like different characters. And I think one of the things was, like...
I think if it was even dubbed in the same language, you would have that happen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But even, like, one of the smaller characters that... hometown crush girl who has a crush on Soma. Yeah, like even her, she sounds less timid, like she's more like comfortable instead of like, I'm really shy around you, Soma, and I really
was gonna
like
say
you.
Like shyness is the central of her character.
Yeah, but I think it's like the casting of her voice. Like I was anticipating maybe like a higher pitched voice, and maybe a little bit more shy of a delivery, but the voice actress sounds a lot more confident when dealing with Soma. Though I would say Soma's a pretty good match. Like the differences aren't like night and day. They're a little bit more subtle.
Okay.
Which I think is still... Whereas like Soma in the Japanese dub is like, I don't really care about anything. Like whatever, I just love cooking. And it's still a lot of that. But he sounds a little bit more like intimate with his food, as opposed to like, I'm really, really into cooking food and I want to be the best cook I can be,
Yeah, like in the Japanese dub, he's more excited about the the prospect of cooking, and isn't so much into taste as much as he is just like the craft itself.
Yeah. So again, the difference isn't night and day, and I wonder how it'll evolve and how I'll feel if I continue watching the dub, which I think I would like to continue watching the dub. I think this is one of those shows that I'm like, I think I want to give it a try, especially since like it's not too much of a departure. Like I tried watching the sub for Dragon Ball Super specifically, and man, the difference between the performance of Sean Schemmel as Goku and the voice actress
Masako Nozawa.
Yeah, for Goku, it was like, oh my god, like what is this? What is this? So I might revisit it at some point, but I digress. And that's all the anime I've been watching. But we have now for the main event, really.
I will point out that we are just a little over 2 months away from the Dragon Ball Super movie. And
super exciting. I'm gonna have to pick up the sub at this point.
Yeah.
if I'm gonna stay up to date and watch that movie in theaters, which I would love to watch in theaters.
Got to support them.
Yeah.
But we got some games to talk about.
We do got some games to talk about. I have a few more that I'll just gloss over before we talk specifically about one of them, and then you can talk about specifically.
I'll let you talk about your little ones, then I'll talk about my little one, and then we can kind of get together for the last one.
So in the past 3 weeks, I finished the story in GTA 5, and that was one of the things I wanted to do before Red Dead Redemption 2, just because I wanted to finish the main content of the game. Right, I bought the game. I wanted to finish the main piece of content.
You were kind of lukewarm, right?
I was very lukewarm about the story, and I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Like, the main draw of GTA is never the story. It's about, driving and crashing cars and killing people and that kind of stuff. But I was really interested because they, had this more elaborate story with the 3 protagonists. But
I was a little surprised to hear you say that, because I was under the impression it was arrive at something. And it sounds like it just doesn't.
Well, are you particularly concerned with spoilers?
For GTA 5, no.
Okay. Well, I had known about the ending of the game. At the ending of the game, as Franklin, you are left with a singular choice, right? And it's to kill off one of the main characters, right?
Okay.
And I think, and so it's essentially kill off your least favorite character, right? But it feels so disingenuous because these characters are pretty well written. They have well thought out backgrounds and motivations, and then you develop an opinion on these people. And then you decide essentially who deserves to live and die. At least that's what it was for me. I'm like, what's the character that if I killed off, I feel like the most good would be done, or who deserves it the most, right?
Who did you kill?
I killed Michael, which I would love to see the statistics of who killed off who and what the percentages are, right?
I would have definitely killed off the other guy.
You're talking about, why am I forgetting his name?
I can't remember his name.
I remember the voice actor. Stephen Ogg. Trevor. Yeah. Trevor. Yeah. I remember.
I didn't like Trevor even a little bit.
And I thought about it because I'm to one degree Trevor's a maniac. He is pretty much what you would think of as a psychopath. He doesn't feel, though there is a relationship in the game where wow, he does genuinely care for this one person, so maybe he's not a complete sociopath.
Okay, so I didn't know about that, but he came off to me as really uninspired.
Oh no, I really like his character, and then he gets angry about being wronged. And he genuinely cares in certain areas, but he constantly references that he had a bad upbringing, that his parents probably beat him and all this other stuff.
Honestly, he sounds like Christopher Nolan's Joker.
Yeah, so I kind of felt for him, whereas Michael also had his motivations, he took some of the actions that he did because he had a family and he wanted to get out, but it seemed a lot more selfish, And so I was more prone to killing off the most selfish character in the game. And this opportunity, this choice is presented to Franklin. And there is a third option to say no, but then Franklin would be targeted, and I think the assumption is that Franklin would die, right?
Okay.
But I'm I like Franklin. Also, I like his vehicle. I think Michael is an awful person, and that he was very selfish, and that, I feel that he's the one who should die, So that's what I chose. But again, it was just very the pacing was bad. It was really bad. All of a sudden it was oh, you did some things, and there was a few heists. I was anticipating more heists in the game,
Hmm.
Like they cut the game short. Like their $265 million were like, oh, we spent it on the development and then we kind of ran short for the story. So we're just
It's kind
gonna
of sad.
rush this out. Um, it didn't. It felt very impersonal to me.
Hmm.
Like all of a sudden, like I'm just gonna make this flippant decision. Like the characters are all like, oh, I'm really struggling with this decision, but then like the decision's really quick, and then you just do the mission and the game ends. There's this whole like segment of like you running after this character, running after Michael, and being like, I'm sorry, I have to do this, and so it just felt very disingenuous. That choice felt very disingenuous, especially as the character of like Franklin, like he brought him up, but I guess I gotta make the decision, and like they leave you with that choice. I feel like it would have been just better if they didn't leave you with that choice and they wrote like a more nuanced ending, you know? So like
Sounds like you don't have any time to digest what happens.
no, it just was, yeah. Um, it just kind of went, and I was like, oh wow, that was a very unrewarding ending, you know.
But what else did you play this week?
Outside of that, I played a little bit of Kingdom Hearts. Still getting through it. The other night I played the Fallout 76 beta, which is a game that I haven't really thought a lot about because I've had other priorities and it wasn't on my plate. I played with my brother and one of his friends, and I had a blast.
It's interesting because like Josiah was telling me about it and he hated it.
Did he play with friends?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay. It's very Fallout 4 in a lot of ways. Though I feel like a lot of the Fallout 4 stuff fits better in a multiplayer context as opposed to like a single player like RPG. That was one of the things that really disappointed me about Fallout 4 is like they took away a lot of that intricacies in the RPG aspect, and it felt less personal. Whereas essentially there's no NPCs. There are no NPCs at all. All the story is told through like logs and like, you'll come across like, situations like areas that you can explore, and you'll find tape sitting around. There'll be a little story to tell. And I really like that. And I liked being with my friends. I mean, that's really the appeal here, right? Is that it's a Fallout game with your friends, and I think that makes it worth it. I don't think it would be able to stand much on its own, but the combat feels good. Like the gunplay feels good. They can't really do VATS all that well because it has to all be in real time because you're playing with friends. You're playing online. So again, I think some of those concessions they made with Fallout 4 make more sense in the context of an MMO of sorts. And I'm excited to see how the world will evolve with like content updates, because I do anticipate content updates for a game like this. Like,
I mean, I'd be surprised if there wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, they've done it with Elder Scrolls Online, so I would anticipate the same.
I mean, that said, Elder Scrolls Online is a little bit more different than the series it stems from.
Right, and to a degree, so is Fallout 76. But again, I enjoyed myself. Not to say that it won't have like its issues, but I can definitely say after playing with my brother and his friend for almost 4 hours, this is something I'm looking forward to, just because I know that there's gonna be other people playing it, right? And the other question is, am I gonna have any time to dedicate to it, right? Because I'm working and I do the break room stuff.
That's kind of what keeps me away from it, I think.
Yeah, and so I'm not totally sold on it just because like I have so much on my plate, and then I will say this. I am playing a small show at a coffee shop on Sunday. And this is one of the first times outside of college where my name has been on, just like, hey, come see this show with these artists, and my name is there, and that's an exciting and terrifying prospect because I haven't been terribly motivated with my music. But these last few days, I've put it on my schedule, and there have been times like, okay, instead of playing video games for an hour, it's why I haven't even gotten very far into the game that we will be talking about, is because I've been prioritizing more of that music, trying to prepare as much as I can for this show that's coming up,
Right.
and it feels good. Like I'm prioritizing the things that I really want to prioritize. And it's funny because like I don't miss video games that much. You know what I mean? Like I love video games, but like when you play them too often, they get really old really quick, because it's all leisure, at least right now it is. Like I'd love, I see myself in the future playing games for work, for the channel and streaming online and turning that into something productive. But then consuming less, but the stuff that I do consume, I'm analyzing more and I'm digesting more and I'm having a better time with that,
It's really not that different than the way we played games as children because, we didn't have the money to buy new games usually.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a lot out of the few games you had. So you spend more time digesting that and, forming an opinion on it.
Yeah. Also, I think it's one of the big appeals as to why we want to do what we want to do here is we would love to turn playing and talking about video games into a job, right? Because then we can justify playing tons of video games, because like it's paying out, and very little right now. But that's why we want to build something is because we want to do something we love and get paid for it, right? Same thing with music. It's why we want to be independent creators. It's why this line of work is so appealing. So we learn other things and we dedicate time to these things and we forego some of those leisurely things to do some work. So eventually we can do the things we love for a job.
Speaking of time, we're running a little long.
Yeah.
So we should probably move on. That said, before we move on, just an hour ago, Fallout, the official Twitter page, announced that Justin Roiland will be streaming Fallout 76 as Rick and Morty.
Wait, when? I knew that was happening, at least to a degree. I didn't know he was going to be streaming it as Rick and Morty, which I think makes the whole stream like
he'll be performing it as Rick and Morty.
Do they have a date for that?
It will be. They didn't put a date on it. November 8th, 6 p.m. Pacific time.
Well, that's pretty exciting.
He'll be streaming alongside Logic and Ninja.
Of course. I know the Logic thing makes sense, right? In terms of like Logic appeared on Rick and Morty.
I mean, Ninja makes sense too.
Well, and then yeah, Ninja makes sense because like he's far and above the largest streamer. I feel like he's made a lot of people take streaming a lot more seriously as a career path.
So one of the games I've been playing is Soul Calibur 6. I'm like a casual fan of the Soul Calibur series. I've played a few of the entries, and I just really enjoy the combat system. There's a lot more focus on the 3D-ness of the arena than there are in other games, and I appreciate that quite a bit. I also love the vast array of weapons and weapon classes that play into character movesets. So I was very excited to pick up Soul Calibur 6. I wasn't super excited about Geralt because I have literally no experience with The Witcher at all. So there was no guest character that made me buy the game. I just bought it because I wanted to play Soul Calibur.
I mean, I would echo that statement. I still really want Soul Calibur, right? I don't know when I will be getting it at some point, right? It might not be until it gets like a price drop. But like I have Soul Calibur 2 and I was playing it a few weeks ago and just appreciating like just like the structure of the combat, you know? And it was one of the
Calibur
first
2 in particular holds up fairly well.
it's still a fantastic game. But like, you know, Soul Calibur released initially on the Dreamcast, right?
Yes.
And it was just one of those games that kind of made like sensible use of 3D space, right? While still maintaining like a 2D fighter to a degree, but adding more like 3D aspects, being able to, you know, move around each other and then having, you know, there's vertical attacks and there's horizontal attacks, you know? And that really, really plays into how you play and how you approach the fight. And it's a good change of pace from like just 2D fighters, you know?
In Soul Calibur 6, you have, you know, your basic arcade modes where you get, you know, a little bit of story of the character you're playing as, but there's a big emphasis on the create a character story mode. You create a character, obviously, and then you have this big world map, and a narrative plays out. On the world map, you can select different missions. It's actually not super linear. There are like side quests and stuff that'll branch off, and you can play those and gain experience or gather items and stuff to kind of beef up your character before you move on.
Right.
And I really like that structure. I can kind of play the game at my own pace, but it's also similar to like Event Match and Smash Brothers, where each fight will have kind of like a special condition attached to it.
Right.
I think they did that with the I forget the name of the mode in Soul Calibur 2, but it's the one where you go around collecting weapons. This is a lot more expansive than that, but that also had like specific special conditions on fights. I'm really enjoying that. Not a lot of fighting games have really compelling single player modes, and for someone who's not particularly good at standard fighting games, this is something I appreciate a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo that same statement. I was actually playing the Skullgirls with Dream Drop the other night, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, so I really enjoy it. The fighting is tight. It actually feels a heck of a lot better than it did in Soul Calibur 2, and that's saying a lot because that game feels great.
Right.
It's really a blast. It looks great, and I can't wait to play more. I've only gotten a few hours with it because of the next game we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
like,
this is the game
the very next day was the day that Red Dead Redemption 2 came out.
Yeah, this has definitely been the game that I've played the most, especially in this past week. I want to say that I'm like 10 hours into it. I think I'm in the second chapter.
I'm closing in on 20, I want to say, for playtime.
Yeah.
And I just hit chapter 3 yesterday.
Yeah. The game is like the world is still very much unfolding, you know? Like something different will happen and like a new aspect of the game will like unlock to a degree. And I was also like wondering like how much like the economy was going to come into play. And I still not sure how. But like I saw like a screenshot posted on Twitter by Jasper of Odd Future fame, if you guys know what Odd Future was. And he had like $121,000. And I was like, you realize you can pick up pennies, right? You can pick up mere pennies.
How much money?
121,000. I was like, how much opportunity is there to like make cash money?
If I hadn't sold anything up to this point, I'd probably have like over $5,000. So I can definitely see that being possible.
But like, I think a lot of like, it's everything in this game there's so much more attention to detail, and I appreciate it so much more than GTA at this point.
Red Dead
Which,
Redemption 2 feels like a world in the way that GTA 5 feels like a sandbox.
yes, yes. Uh,
Uh, Also, the more emphasis on storytelling is immediately like prevalent when you start the game.
oh, absolutely. And oh
There's
man, all the dialogue's so well written. Even like
Mhm.
passing conversation that's like insignificant, like just feels very nuanced and well cared for.
Yeah. Also, like they nail the setting. I think the way characters speak, it feels accurate. The relationships between different types of people feels accurate, but in a very inoffensive way, which I'm surprised they were able to land that.
Yeah, there's even like little things like, okay, I love the way that like you go to your shaving kit and like your hair grows over time and then you can just like trim up, like there's like 10 degrees of length for your beard, right? Right
And
now I'm
you
just
can just trim certain parts of it too.
yeah, right now I'm just trying to grow my beard and my hair out as long as it can go and then go from there. But
I got up to like a solid 6.
at one point, I was just growing out the mustache, so I had this big old bushy mustache, and then I shaved my head. And that's what I was going around for a few hours. I should say that okay, and this is approximate, right? Okay, I say 10 hours, but I kid you not, this isn't approximate. Probably about 2 hours of that time has been spent playing poker.
It's fun.
It's like legit poker.
It's
And
just
it's just
poker.
I'm so I think one of the reasons this hit game has me going, and at first I was like, I want to beat the single player before like the multiplayer comes out. That's just not realistic. But I can't wait
It's like
for
a
the multiplayer.
60-hour campaign.
Yeah. I cannot wait for the multiplayer to come out because
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to be a cowboy and I want to be in a gang with my friends and I want to like take over and buy property and just build up that gang. Like that's so appealing to me. Also, I love the idea that I imagine this will be a thing. It within like our online gang camp location that we can all just sit down and play poker together.
Oh, I'd be surprised if that wasn't a feature.
Yeah.
Or
I'm
like
just-
Five Finger Fillet or something.
Yeah. I'm not, there's certain aspects of the game that I'm not like terribly, I'm not like in love with, not like they detract from the gameplay. The game is definitely slower. And I find myself just because it's an open world game, like comparing it to, Breath of the Wild. And I can also understand why Nintendo would describe Breath of the Wild as an open air game, right? Because it literally feels like there's no like space in between and it rewards you for every little thing that you do, which isn't something that Red Dead does, or nor does it try to do. It's not like the focus of that game, it's all about the actual locations and the relationships and being a cowboy and all that good stuff. So there are differences. Man, but I think it makes me appreciate both games a little bit more. Just
I
identifying the
definitely
differences.
love kind of the slower pace of Red Dead Redemption 2 in a lot of ways. There are moments where I can just kind of stop and just enjoy it without somebody talking to me in game or having to dig through a menu. I love the very minimalist UI where there's just a radar on screen and that's it.
Right.
But the game allows me to just kind of take it slow, and that's something that a lot of games these days don't do.
Yeah. I have been making a lot of use in the last few hours of gameplay of the cinematic camera. And just really almost stop playing the game for a minute and just take in the conversation and the view and what's happening on screen instead of making sure that I'm playing the game right or keeping up with this character. Just holding down the touchpad and
Hmm.
initiating the cinematic camera and just holding X, and it follows right along with, the other characters, and then you can just take in what's happening on screen.
Yeah, they definitely like encourage that a lot in the beginning. I found myself using it less, um, because I spend a lot more time just trying to navigate myself. But I guess if I used the camera, I wouldn't have to worry about that anyway.
Oh, yeah, like it doesn't, like, you have to have like the manual control if you don't use the cinematic camera. But if you use the cinematic camera and you just like hold down X, like it'll match the speed of the other guys on the horse and it'll follow them. So they make it
Speaking of
really accessible.
speaking of horseback, the horseback riding feels really good.
Feels really good. It
It
feels really
feels a
good.
lot better than the first game. I'll say that.
I haven't really played the first game, so I can't really speak to that. But
This is the least clunky horse controls I've ever dealt with in a game.
yeah. I think the only horse controls I like better are Breath of the Wild, just
I think the
because,
world design probably plays into that more.
well, that, and then like just some of the functionality, and then it's a little bit more cartoony because it's not trying to be realistic. Like,
Yeah.
I love when like you come from the front of the horse in Breath of the Wild and Link just kind of like swings up, on top of the horse, and then you're going. Where they play a little bit more to the realism of getting on a horse,
Hmm.
but it's not like cumbersome. The horse controls are fantastic. They just, I never feel like they get in the way. The only thing that I felt like is a little bit of annoying is when you get in like a carriage, right, and you have like two horses leading it, and then if you make the wrong turn and like you hit a rock and you can't get over the rock and you have to back up, it's so slow and the controls are like but if that ever
Oh,
happens to you, it's not.
I've never had that happen.
But it's happened to me on several occasions, and I'm like,
The first time I was driving a carriage, I didn't realize I could make it go faster.
uh-huh.
And like the conversation, it was a very long conversation that took place, finished, and like 3 minutes later, I arrived at my destination.
Yeah, sometimes it's nicer to like, sometimes I'll willingly choose to like not get there quickly. You know what I mean?
I mean, that was a case of me not knowing I could get there quickly.
Right, but at the same time, now that it's an option, um
It's like the have you unlocked fast travel?
yes, I haven't used it.
Well, you can only use it from camp. They go out of their way to make it so that you can't use fast travel.
I don't really
And
care to.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I kind of appreciate that. Because there's a lot of things that will just happen to you naturally on the way to a destination
Yes.
that makes it feel like being a cowboy, and that's essential to the gameplay.
Yeah.
So I commend the decision to kind of restrict that.
That being said, there is fast travel from other locations, but you have to like go from one location to another. You can't just do it from anywhere.
Yeah.
So it kind of plays into like the immersion of the world. Like you have to be at like a certain location to get on something. It's like fast traveling in GTA. Like if you really want to fast travel in GTA, like you got to get into you got to like get into a taxi, and then it takes you some places, and then it gives you the option, to be in the taxi and experience that full taxi ride, or you can skip it. So they make certain concessions just for like those who are like, oh, I really don't want to do or go this far again. But in Red Dead, again, talking about like you'll pass a carriage and it'll be a cage, and there'll be some outlaws in there, and then you can decide, well, maybe I'm gonna jump on this carriage and let the outlaws free, or maybe
Or you'll do what I do and you'll carry them onto the back of a train and then throw them off of the train while they're hogtied.
I haven't done something that drastic or creative. There was one time, like, sometimes you'll see, like, two people on horses, and they'll have somebody on the back, and they'll be bounty hunters, right? And sometimes like those bounty hunters, I'm like, depending on the person on the back, I'll react accordingly. Like I feel like, oh, they deserve it, whatever, I'm gonna let them go. But there was one time it was a woman. Like they hogtied a woman and put her on the back, and I was like, I'm not okay with this. I'm not okay with this. I can't imagine that she did anything terribly wrong. And so I like really quick whipped around on my horse, pulled out my gun, and then I really like Deadeye. I think it's like
Deadeye's really cool.
Like I almost exclusively shoot in Deadeye now. I think it's a great way to do like open world combat, especially like Western combat, like boom, 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 boom. Like, oh, look, I'm a real maverick. It makes me feel like that. Yeah. So I did that, took out the guys, untied her and set her on her way, and all you gain is a little bit of honor, right? And then there was like, okay, and two other situations that I was like, I'm gonna do this, right? One was part of like you have to go out and collect debts for one of the guys in your gang.
For Strauss.
Yeah, and like one of the guys, you get to one of these, you're trying to get it from a lady, right? But then like her significant other's like, I'm gonna beat you up, and then like then I beat him up, right? And then I took his hat for one.
I love that.
Yeah, I just love how it's like your hat can fall off, but then you can like, if it's your hat, it's in your inventory, you can always just throw it back on, even if you don't pick it back up. But somebody saw, and then I chased after that guy, and then I tied him up, and then I put him on the back of my horse. And then as I was running away, somebody else saw me, and then I didn't go back for that witness. And then I, ended up, but then I was like, screw it. And I took this guy out in the middle of nowhere, and then I shot him. And then there was one more thing that happened, and it left me. So who cares? But
I
like,
was just riding along. I don't even think I was doing anything specific at the time. I was just going. And this dude is like brushing his horse, and I just stopped to say hello. And I think we talked about like maybe arranging a sale of some kind. And I get off my horse, and he starts walking towards me, and then his horse bucked him, and he died.
Dude, that happened to me too. That happened to me. This guy was like, I just kind of like, I didn't even like talk to him. I said hey, and he goes, hey, and then bucked him, and he was dead. And I was like, did that just happen? Oh well, whatever. I think this is where it's similar to Breath of the Wild, and not so much in its essence, but in its design, in interactions, right? Breath of the Wild had this multiplicative gameplay where they had a bunch of aspects and they all interacted to create like an incredible amount of possibilities in terms of gameplay. And that was just for the gameplay, like the way you interacted with the world.
Right.
Where Red Dead does this is in the ways that you can interact, with people specifically. Like you can tie them up, you can threaten them, you can do anything. People see you, you're a witness, but then like they won't know who you are if you actually remember to put your bandana on, which I forget to do all the time, So just the amount of things you can go bounty hunting, people can bounty hunt you,
You can go hunting.
Yeah. And so there's just like a whole host of things that just kind of stack on top of each other. And
it's all of these things that make the prospect of multiplayer so exciting.
Right.
There's going to be this sense of like with Rust, when you interact with other players and you just don't know what their intentions are.
Yeah.
What is it called? Not immersive, but immersive storytelling, right?
Yeah, I guess that would work. It's like immigration versus emigration.
So yeah, I'm excited about the idea of role playing as a cowboy and living that life with my own gang.
Yeah.
Also, the lasso is my favorite thing in the whole game, and I use it all the time on
Oh,
everything.
dude, the lasso is so much fun. Like
Yeah,
my first like, if I'm like about to like sneak up on somebody, the first thing I do is like pull up my lasso. I'm like, let's get him, let's get
it's
him,
so
wrap him up,
satisfying.
pull him in, wrap him up, throw him on the back of your horse.
There was a lady I was doing a bounty for, and she like her deal was that she would find suitors and then murder them, like after getting close to them for a bit. So I stumbled upon her with a dude, and she told the dude to kill me because I was a bounty hunter. And he said no, so she took out a knife and stabbed him to death.
Oh my
And then she
god.
just ran at me, and I pulled out my lasso, and I didn't have enough time to throw it at her. But as she approached me, I dodged her one swipe with her knife, punched her in the face, and then immediately hogtied her because the lasso was out.
Yeah.
And it just felt good that I was able to do that.
Yeah, you know, this game really excels in its storytelling. Like it tells like a ton of amazing and ridiculous like smaller stories that just make you go, "Huh." And then, you know, you might chuckle at some of them, you might be like that's awful. Like there have already been several situations just like encounters that they've crafted, like missions that they've crafted that are just they feel just so varied and intricate. Like, you know, a lot of, and it all, sometimes they'll fall under these like umbrella like missions. Like, here are certain activities that you could do in the world. You can go collect debts. You can go rob houses and such.
And every one of them's different.
And so different. All the settings are so different, and like you can really go at them in any way. Like if you go in shooting, you might be missing out on some really great dialogue or some situations, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's even just the basic side quests, not the kind of umbrella side quests, but like the crafted side quests that they have in the game. In my opinion, are just as good as the story missions.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the characters, they're so zany.
I did one yesterday where I had to help like the owner of a circus retrieve all of his circus animals that fell out of his
started
carriage.
that one, and then like you get the zebra, and it's not a zebra.
It's a donkey with paint on it.
And after they make you do that one because that's the one's like, oh, it's not dangerous, and don't spoil this one for me because I'm like in the middle of it. I can't wait to see like what the other animals are, if they're legit or not, because I'm questioning
That's what kept me playing that mission. Is they set that expectation, and it draws you to keep playing it. And I was really impressed because it was just a side quest. I didn't have to do it.
It's just something you come upon. You know, it's like, oh, there's a location and like there's a marker on your map and it's all white and there's a question mark, and then you find the person, you start doing it, and you're like, this is nuts. There was one side quest I came upon where you go to like a pig farm, and there is a couple and their brother and sister, and I think it's like it's almost implied that they're like incestuous.
Okay, definitely haven't found that one yet.
I won't spoil that one, but I let it play out. Like I thought about just going in and shooting them up, you know, and taking their money, taking their stash. But I'm so glad I let it play out, because like they put you in this situation and you're so uncomfortable, and then it's funny because then I went back and I murdered them and took their money and stuff.
That's something I'll say about the character of Arthur Morgan that really impresses me. Like the writing team has not given Arthur Morgan an explicit position on anything. He always like responds to things with a level of vagueness because it's up to you to fill out what he actually does.
Yeah.
So it always feels incredibly consistent regardless of what you do as Arthur Morgan.
Yeah. Nothing ever feels out of character. Like you feel like you can be anything and you can decide who that is, but then if you do something outside of that, you're also like, whatever. Like I remember,
like if you help somebody, he's usually hesitant about it. And if you try and, rob somebody, he's usually hesitant about it.
Right. There was a point in which I went and they had like this traveling act that was in this theater, right? Like the one theater you go into.
Yeah.
one theater you go into, it's this like moving picture, and it's a bunch of slides and stuff like that, and that first area outside of like the intro of the game. But then you get into like one of those larger cities where they actually like, they don't just call them lawmen, but they're like actually police officers. And I think it was like a vaudeville, show. I think that's what they called them, which I've actually like studied that kind of stuff, and I'm like, this is so interesting to me. And they have this
in Rhodes. I just got to Rhodes yesterday.
It was in Rhodes, and this was even before like the actual group moved to that location. Like I was just,
you just kind of showed up.
Yeah, at a certain point I was like, I want to see how big the world is, and so I just started riding around, like uncovering the map to see how large it was. Like I stopped doing anything else, and I just started riding around uncovering the map. But then I went into the show and I sat around for the first act, and like, you could tell you could probably sit there for a good hour and watch this whole show, or maybe not an hour, maybe like 15-20 minutes. But this first act, at a certain point, you can have like a positive reaction and clap and cheer like, yay. Or you can like antagonize and be like, boo, you suck. Or like, when's the real, or this is fake. And at a certain point, like, there's this act where this guy catches a bullet, and you can tell that it's like a blank, and I'm like, okay, I'm calling this guy's BS, and I'm antagonizing him, and he actually like invites somebody to shoot a real gun at him, and I'm like, there's not this actual level of interaction, is there? But there is, and you're like, oh man, I can't wait, because like, you think it's BS, and you think when you shoot, like, that you're gonna kill him, and like, that would be hysterical, right? But you shoot him, and he catches the bullet in his teeth.
Oh my god.
And you're like, they just pulled that on me. And then I was like, I instinctually, like, I can't antagonize anymore. Like, I'm gonna react positively.
Like, you tried to heckle the dude, and like, in character, he shut you down.
Yeah, in
That's
the game,
amazing.
like, it was, it was a scripted event to a degree,
Right.
but you had to actually make the script happen. And I was like, oh, cool. And then some lady started, playing with fire and swallowing, and then I left.
I'm sure, like, if you had shot him before he invited it, he probably would have died. And that's
But
another
they don't.
outcome.
They also don't give you that option before. Like, they limit you in that way. The other thing that I was gonna say earlier, another just one of these things that happened, like I felt compelled to do something, and I got myself in a lot of trouble. Is I was walking around Rhodes after, not Rhodes. It's like a bigger city. Maybe it's Rhodes. Maybe that's just like the whole area.
Rhodes is the town.
Rhodes, yes, Rhodes is a smaller town. There's a bigger city, like, with a bunch of docks, and that's where this was.
Okay.
And I was just walking around, and there's these two guys like in an alleyway, and one makes like a snarky comment my way, and I felt compelled to fight him. I was like, no, you're not going to say that. And I punched him, and I ended up killing both of the guys. And then a bunch of police showed up, and I'm like, I'm not giving myself up. So I killed a bunch of police officers, hopped on my horse, got away, and before I knew it, I had a $190 bounty on my head.
That's
Which I
amazing.
eventually paid off. And that's the other thing, is like, I wonder if there's other ways to get rid of bounties. You know what I mean?
I think you can avoid them by changing your outfit.
That's another thing, is like, you can still have the bounty and just like avoid anybody noticing you. That was another thing I had considered.
Because you could, like, grow your facial hair out or shave and change how you look, and they won't know it's you.
Right. That's really cool. And I think that's really what I'm enjoying about this game, is just the sheer amount of situations that'll happen in this game that just make it feel so rich. And I feel like nothing has happened twice yet in the same way. Everything plays out differently.
And that's what's so impressive with, like, the length of the campaign. Like, I've got at least 30 hours to go, and it's still just super fresh.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying this game a lot. I don't know when I'll actually finish it, because I can't dedicate a lot of time to it. And I think for the first time in my life, I'm not upset about that, because I am dedicating so much time to other things.
I'm just kind of playing it at my pace as well, because I know this is
Yeah.
a game that'll still be around for me. I mean, knowing there's a narrative kind of encourages me to just keep playing at a steady pace so I don't
Yeah.
forget things. But that said, like I don't think I could be any happier with this purchase right now. And
Yeah.
I've usually been pretty lukewarm like on previous Rockstar games, but this one I really latched onto.
Yeah. So we'll see how I feel once I finish it, and also once the online comes out, because I'm very excited about the online.
I hope that's out next week because I don't want it to come out at the same time as Pokemon Let's Go.
I just want to start playing it before Smash comes out, because Smash is the next big purchase. If I don't also purchase Fallout 76, but that's a really big if, just because of time constraints and budget constraints, which I'm not upset about, because I'm dedicating time to other things that are more meaningful in a lot of ways, and
Right.
I think that's me growing up. I think that's what maturity feels like.
You're not wrong.
So it's about time.
That said, like we've been going for way over 2 hours now.
Yeah.
That said, like, it's been 3 weeks since we did a show, so it's probably best that we gave you a little meatier one this time. We're just going to keep this going on the bi-weekly schedule, so we'll just do the next one 2 weeks from today instead of doing it next week. And hopefully we'll have Paul back on eventually.
Yeah.
We anticipate that we're going to have to change the times of both of the podcasts fairly soon here, and we will keep you updated as we make some decisions about that. That said, neither podcast is going anywhere, so we'll have them both. Dream Drop says, "You guys are somehow making me interested in a Rockstar game. Stop."
Yeah. I'll say this as kind of a final statement, and it's more just a plug for Discord. Just I want to keep talking about these things. I would keep talking about these things for hours on end. And so please hop back into the Discord. Talk to us about Red Dead. Talk to us about Sabrina, about Riverdale, about all of these things, because I love discussing these things. Yeah, join our Discord. But I think everybody in the stream is currently in our Discord, so.
And I've posted the link like 3 or 4 times throughout. But with all that in mind, guys, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Babababs. Follow Logan at LoggyDoes. You can follow us collective at Breakroom Arcade. Like Logan said, join our Discord to keep following us and talking to us and just keep the conversation going. If you're new here and liked what you saw, please hit like on the YouTube video and subscribe to the channel for more content. Also, if you can help us, it'd help us. You would rate us on podcast sources, specifically Apple Podcasts would be very helpful to helping our show grow in those places. And if you're here because you saw the 50 Fact Extravaganza, welcome. I'm glad you liked that, and I hope you like what we're doing right now. And if you really want to help support us even further, there's a link to our Patreon in the description. You can support us for as little as $1 a month, and that comes with some cool podcast perks. So make sure to explore that a little bit, and if you help us out, we'd appreciate it. With all that in mind, though, I think we're ready to wrap up. So don't break your backs. Break in the games. But for now, break time's over.
And watch Sabrina on Netflix later.